In a world where the wild places are shrinking, there is a quiet, unshakable love that drives some of us to act in ways the rest of us may not understand. It's a love born not of obligation but of reverence, for ancient forests that whisper forgotten stories, for rivers that sing their way to the sea, for creatures that vanish into the forest, living lives we can only imagine, until our impact on their world threatens their very existence. These protectors, mysterious and sometimes controversial, operate on the margins of society, challenging our ideas of what it means to safeguard the earth. They don't ask for approval or permission. They simply act, driven by a fierce commitment to preserving the beauty and balance of the natural world. And perhaps that's what we should all focus on, the outcome, not the method. When the forest still stands tall, while the animals still roam freely, when the streams run clear under a canopy of stars, does it matter how it was done? The line between hero and renegade is blurred in the wilderness, where intentions matter less than results. These defenders of the earth remind us that love for the environment isn't always tidy or conventional. Sometimes it's wild and raw, as unpredictable as nature itself. But if the earth thrives because of them, perhaps it's time to embrace the unconventional and celebrate the guardians who understand that saving something sacred doesn't always come with the most acceptable practices. Welcome to If These Trees Could Talk.
We would like to express our heartfelt gratitude to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have cared for this land for tens of thousands of years. Their connection to country ensures that we can continue to appreciate its beauty and significance today. We honour the wisdom and stories shared by the Aboriginal and Torres Strait people and recognise the responsibility to preserve and celebrate this legacy. This podcast is recorded on Wonnarua land and we extend our respect to the elders past, present and emerging. We acknowledge the lands you are listening from today, as well as the lands on which today's story takes place, the Taungurung land to the north and the Gunai land to the south. Finally, we express our gratitude to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people listening today. Thank you for continuing to share your culture, your knowledge, and your connection to this land.
There was one unexplained shot of the photographer asleep inside of his tent, and no one knows who took the photo. So what better way to sensationalise a story than making implications that perhaps this man in the wilderness is hurting people, or worse, a serial killer?
Is there anything that you would like to say if the button man happened to listen to this podcast?
Teach me your ways, wise man. Hi, Megan.
Hi, Shannon.
So we probably should have a little bit of a catch up because this will be our second episode back for this year, but I didn't really think that the last episode was probably the right place for us to ramble on with our crazy stuff. So I hope everyone had a great holiday. I did want to say that last time. And I do want to say thank you to everybody who has shared Nigel's episode. That was a pretty dig beal. Just in case Megan's going to leave that in. I turned up and Megan has poured wine for today's episode. This is a 2025 thing for Megan. Welcome back to the dark side. Megan had 12 months completely alcohol-free because what she does is set goals for herself and sticks to them religiously. I've been waiting a whole 12 months for you to be able to drink wine while we record a podcast episode.
And here we are. Cheers, Shannon.
Cheers. Happy 2025.
Happy 2025.
Thank you. So yes, I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who has shared Nigel's episode because that was a real big deal for us, and I feel incredibly blessed that they entrusted us to share that story for them. It's had a lot of traction so far and I'm really grateful for everybody sharing that. The main goal is obviously to get it into as many ears as possible. So if you have listened and haven't shared it, if you could do that, that would be great. Or even just have a conversation with a friend and ask them if they remember hearing about it in the media, and, then if they're interested, you can maybe share the episode with them if sharing stuff on your socials is not your jam. So do you have a word for this year, Megan?
My word is simplify.
Oh.
Yeah, it's going to relate to lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the status that goes with when you ask someone, "Hey, how are you?" and they say busy. I don't want to be that
Hate
person
that, yeah.
anymore. I'm just going to simplify everything. My belongings, financially and emotionally, and I just, simple. What's your word?
My word is observe.
Go deeper.
Multifaceted. It did take me a little while to come up with because I had to find the collective in all of the things that I wanted to focus on, and observe covers everything. We'll actually learn a little bit more about this today, but I can sometimes be quick to react to things. I have committed to observing my feelings when that comes up, and that sometimes my opinion doesn't hold weight in a situation. So if I can observe the situation and my feelings around it, I can then make an educated choice about whether it's something that will benefit from me weighing in on or not. Also, the commitment to caring for the people around me. So observing other people and their behaviours, and if they're showing signs that they might not be okay, I want to really commit to looking at that. And the other part of that too is for what we're doing here, looking, learning. I'm a real people watcher. That's probably not a surprise to anyone, but observing your surroundings, taking in the things that matter while you're there. That's where all of this comes from. Yeah, that's my word for 2025.
I love that. And I think by not talking sometimes, you just can take in so much more. I did a silent meditation retreat for a weekend.
I remember this.
Oh, it was a life changer. But what I found most surprising over the whole weekend was that the only time I actually felt that I needed to talk was to say thank you to the people who gave me food. I wasn't with anyone that I knew. I was sharing a room with somebody who I had never had a conversation with for 2 nights.
So strange.
Yeah, it was really strange, but I never felt like once we were all given permission to not talk, I didn't ever feel like I needed to talk. And then when you're not talking, your brain's not ticking over, oh, what do I need to say next? So your brain's got the space to think about other things.
Yeah, okay.
Not that I'm telling you not to talk. I think that you're a very good talker and you should talk.
But sometimes I talk too much.
No.
Yes. You do know this about me, and the people in podcast land cannot see the sarcasm on your face.
I talk too. Maybe a little bit today. Let's blame it on the wine.
Megan had a birthday recently, and I have given her a gift that she doesn't know what it is.
Do you want me to read the poem?
Yeah, ChatGPT helped me with that.
No.
Yeah, that was pretty specific. I needed to get you to choose a date and tell you that I'd got you a birthday present, and my skills didn't go that far. And I also used AI to make the photo.
It's beautiful.
Megan teaches me all of the tech things that I don't know how to use properly. So I thought she'd really appreciate that I used ChatGPT and AI to make her.
I don't think I look so closely at the 3 people, but you've specifically asked for the 3 people.
It's the 3 people.
That's us. That's adorable. Okay. A gift for you I do bestow, a day for you to steal the show. For all you bring, for all you do, a mysterious treat awaits for you. But here's the twist. It's your call. Pick a date where your schedule's small. It's all the time now. Soon I've simplified my life. I'm not busy anymore. A date, a night, or yours to choose, an outing planned you cannot lose. Wrapped in history and a bit of fear, a day that's branded to mark our year. So pick the time, I'll make it great. Your surprise awaits. Just name the date.
Did you see that I'd used the word branded?
Okay. All right. No, I didn't notice the quotation marks earlier.
So I just wanted to include that so we could capture what you think it could possibly be.
Okay, so here is you and I and one of our mutual friends
So
who has orange hair.
I did invite this mutual friend because she's very, very sensible. She is the mum of the group. And I thought if I could convince her to come and she knows the full story, that then Megan would participate. Because if I get sidetracked, you'll have a safe person.
I love that. Okay, so we're standing in front of a mansion and there's a bat. Did you ask AI to put the bat in?
I did also ask AI to put a ghost in, but I took it out.
Oh, gosh. What are we doing? Are we going to Maitland Jail?
No, Maitland Jail's closed
Oh.
currently.
Are we doing a ghost tour?
There will be ghosts there, yes. So I'm going to give you a couple of clues. This place has its own beach. You need to bring a snorkel. You need to bring walking clothes because it's in a national park. We are going on a tour and we are sleeping at the same place we go on the tour.
Oh, Shannon. This is why I need my friend.
But there's a snorkel. You need a snorkel because it has its own beach.
Oh, my goodness.
You are going to really like this place. The place that we are sleeping in is actually part of a hotel chain, even though it is on the premises as the same place that we will be doing the history/ghost tour.
So there'll be towels and bath gel.
Towels, bath gel, nice white crisp linen.
Okay. I'm very excited. I'm going to Google this tonight and figure out what this is, something
Okay.
that just takes less than 2 hours to get to.
And is perfectly branded for us. Paranormal, national parks, nature, holidays. There'll be some cultural significance and history. I'm so excited for you to find out. The plan was, after Nigel's story, to have something really nice and light and easy breezy today. I did start researching a ghost story, and in my usual style, I then started fact checking it. Deep dark rabbit hole. This lady's history is so tragic. And I was like, I can't do this 2 weeks in a row. So anyway, we've got something a bit lighter. I have been promising you the story about the button man.
You have? So today you haven't blindsided me.
No.
I'm a little bit prepared because I knew that this was coming and I'm very excited and I've done my own research and I couldn't sleep. Thank you very much.
I love the impact I have on your life. So we are heading back to the Wonnangatta Valley, which we have been to before. We visited the Russell Hill and Carol Clay case in episode 5. And you don't have to have listened to that for this to make sense. But if you do want to have a deeper dive into that after you've listened to this, head back to episode 5 and you'll get all the national parky stuff and how pretty it is. And we talked about the pygmy possum and all of that kind of stuff there. So to save us a bit of time and to try and get it under 40 minutes so I don't get in trouble off Megan, I'll leave you guys to have a listen to that. But for the people who did listen to the Russell Hill and Carol Clay episode, I want to just give a quick update on that. So if you haven't listened and you want to and you don't want to know the end before the start, just cover your ears for maybe 2 minutes. So as we expected, Greg Lynn has appealed his conviction. The appeal is based on 4 grounds, the first being that the defence team launched a sustained attack on the credibility of Mr. Lynn's evidence without giving him the opportunity to respond. The Crown prosecutor, Daniel Porchadou, made statements during the closing of the case arguing that Lynn had changed parts of his story to make it more believable and to line up with the evidence as it was being presented. As this was done during closing and not during questioning, Lynn was not able to respond to that, so they are using that as grounds for appeal. The second point is that Lynn's lawyers have claimed that the ballistic analysis was a botched exercise. So that's the guy who did all the investigation into the guns and the direction and all of that kind of stuff.
I Googled ballistics last week.
What?
After
Why?
Narelle talked about it.
Oh, she did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, right. And the third and fourth arms of the appeal are in relation to the jury's decision-making. Lynn's legal team claimed that the jury travelled down an impermissible pathway in arriving at the guilty verdict for the murder of Carol Clay. They will also appeal against the 32-year sentence passed down by Justice Croucher, calling it manifestly excessive. And I have a lot of opinions about all of these things, but because there is an appeal coming up, I can't give you any of them. Legally, you don't want to interfere. I don't know what happens in appeals if there's I don't think there's juries. I think it's just the judge, but I'll leave that to the professionals. Again, Hedley Thomas is not on our payroll.
Not
We don't have
yet.
his lawyers. Yeah, so we'll just leave that alone. I just wanted to give you guys that were invested, and it's still one of our top rating episodes. So I just thought I'd give you a catch up there. There's also a little bit of talk about Russell Hill's family. I think they've been advised and are considering taking the case to a civil trial. While their motivation is not at all monetary, the rule of law in civil matters means that a lot of the information that's withheld from a jury in a criminal trial, for instance, just how cooperative Gregory Lynn was a huge part of the defence's argument. However, what wasn't presented to the jury, among many things, was that he had lied to police for days during questioning before presenting them with what was eventually referred to as a fanciful version of events. I really hope if the Hill family do pursue this, that they get the opportunity to hear a judge name the individual responsible for his death, even if there's no penalty attached. I want to be very clear that I'm not sharing this and the little bit that's going to come next because I believe the Button Man has anything to do with any of it. In fact, I firmly sit in the opposite camp. But I'd like to make some really snarky comments towards some journalists who got so much traction from trying to tie him to the disappearances. So to do that, I have to give you a little bit of context. Especially in the time immediately after Russell and Carol's camp was found before Greg Lynn was publicly identified as a suspect. During this time, the Button Man was painted as the Australian version of the Boogie Man, with speculation that he might even be a serial killer. However, it's easy to forget that the Australian terrain can swallow up the unprepared or the unfortunate. In recent years, there have been experienced hunters, well-equipped bushwalkers, campers and day trippers who have disappeared without a trace, often in completely unexplained and mysterious circumstances. It is entirely possible for people who become lost, disorientated or unwell to die in the Victorian high country, and their bodies can be lost forever. However, when the number of cases grows without apparent reason in such a small geographical area, the talk of ominous factors, even if they are not based on hard evidence, really grabbed a lot of attention. Russell Hill, 74, and Carol Clay, 73, disappeared on March 20th, 2020. Most of you know the rest, and if you don't, you can check back in like I mentioned before. Although authorities questioned the Button Man during the initial investigation, he was immediately dismissed as a suspect. On October 24th, 2019, Nels Becker, 39, an experienced bushwalker, went missing on a solo 5-day hike in Alpine National Park, which he had prepared for months. Police said Mr. Becker was well equipped for the hike and was familiar with the area. The last confirmed sighting was by the Button Man, who told police he had seen him in the area near his camp. The track took him past the Button Man's camp, and it's not surprising as his camp was in a position where bushwalkers in the know head because it's one of the few places with good radio reception. Conrad Whitlock, 72, drove into the high country in July 2019, where he left his white BMW in darkness on the side of Mount Buller Road, along with his jacket, mobile phone and car keys. Conrad was last seen by his wife as they climbed into bed about 11:30 p.m. before she awoke at 5:30 a.m. to find him gone. He failed to arrive for work the next day, raising concerns for his whereabouts. Victorian Police Inspector David Brown said officers found the car in working condition with Whitlock's jacket, mobile phone and car keys all inside. At the moment, there is nothing to indicate a reason for the vehicle to have stopped, he said. The vehicle had the keys with it, it started, it had fuel, so as to why Mr. Whitlock has gone away from the vehicle at this stage, it's simply not known, Inspector Brown said. David Prideaux, 50, former Barwon prisoner governor, was a passionate bush hunter, and on June 5th, 2011, he went deer hunting with his brother-in-law in Alpine National Park. He has not been seen since. Despite several searches of the area for months after his disappearance, there was no trace of Prideaux or any of his belongings. There were many theories, including that he was killed over the murder of drug dealer Carl Williams, who had been ambushed and murdered inside of Barwon Prison more than a year before David disappeared. Still, a hitman was unlikely to creep up on an experienced hunter. Media reports also raised the possibility Prideaux had sensitive police files, including allegations of police corruption when he went missing. The coroner also ruled out suggestions David faked his own death after several reported sightings over the years, including in the Western Australian town of Broome. The inquest into his death heard investigators had meticulously combed over Prideaux's bank accounts, but they had not been touched since he vanished. Similar searches of his mobile phone records and Centrelink, Medicare, Australia Post and betting agencies had also failed to trace a link. The coroner found it likely that Prideaux died from a serious accident in the national park or a medical cause, and there was nothing to suggest that he met with foul play. The coroner was satisfied that he is deceased, but the cause is unknown. Warren Meyer, 57, disappeared from Dom Dom Saddle on March 23, 2008. For Meyer, an experienced bushwalker, the 4-hour Easter Sunday hike was easy. The weather was fine and he was equipped with a phone, GPS, food and water, yet he was never heard from again. Warren had set off at 7:45am and arranged to meet his wife and some friends for lunch. He failed to show and his car was found parked locked at the Dom Dom Saddle car park later that afternoon. Meyer ran a successful civil engineering consultancy business in Elwood and had been planning for his retirement. There were reports of semi-automatic gunfire heard in the area on the morning of Warren's disappearance, and that a large marijuana crop was found during the search for him. An escaped involuntary psychiatric patient was also found roaming near the track where Meyer had been walking during the investigation. Despite being investigated by local police, the Missing Persons Unit and the Homicide Squad, no trace of him has ever been found. Despite the attention the disappearance garnered, the case went cold. In December 2017, coroner John Ohl concluded that Mr. Meyer had died of unknown causes and that no further investigation was required.
I feel like there is a whole episode in every single one of those paragraphs you just
There
read.
is absolutely a whole episode in every single one of those, and there is a lot of information out there, but because of the collective, so all of these people, including Russell and Carol, were in a 60-kilometre radius. And it all happened between 2008 and 2020. And you have to understand that the Warnangatta Valley, it takes a long time to get down in there. Even though, as the crow flies, it's quite close to Melbourne, it's extremely rugged terrain. You have to know what you're doing to be able to do it well. The four-wheel driving's not easy, the hiking's not easy, and it is in Alpine National Park. It can get extremely cold. Weather is sporadic and can change very, very quickly. So you wouldn't say that it's unexpected that people would go missing in that area. It's very understandable that even people who are well prepared could have accidents. But it is strange that they've never found a trace.
What's drawing people to visit this place?
It's beautiful. And the Warnangatta, which is the valley that lies between two mountain ranges, it's been steeped in mystery for right back to the first white settlement. There's historic huts there, and the man who owned that hut that run cattle up in that high country back in the early days of colonisation, he was murdered, and they found his body buried in the riverbank, and they went looking for the person who killed him, who they assumed was somebody who worked for him. And they couldn't find that person. He'd disappeared. But then someone found his body weeks or months later. And apparently people in the surrounding towns know who did it, but no one has ever really spoken up. And I don't know whether that guy's death was retribution for killing the person. So there's a lot. That could be an episode in itself as well. Victoria's high country attracts an estimated 436,000 visitors a year, as adventure seekers flock to the wilderness to embrace its winter sports or summer-friendly cycling, bushwalking tracks and hunting grounds. But the pull of the wilderness is stronger for some than others. The Button Man is a mysterious figure who roams the remote regions of the high country. Known for his reclusive lifestyle and distinctive appearance, he has become the subject of intrigue amongst locals and adventurers. The Button Man is a rugged, expert bushman who has earned his nickname from the habit of using deer antlers to make buttons and create large plugs for his ear piercings. He's reported to camp on the side of a remote mountain that lets him see anyone approaching. He uses snares to catch deer and hunts with an expertly crafted Indigenous-style spear. Many campers and hunters have stories of the Button Man approaching them at campsites once it gets dark, creeping up on them like a ghost. He's around 70 years of age with short grey hair, wearing a dark jacket, and those he encounters call him Bloody Scary. However, only a few have reported any actual threat. He questions visitors about why they're in the vicinity, but rarely responds to questions about himself. They say he moves through the most challenging terrain with the competence and stamina of someone half his age without the use of lights.
Without the use of what?
Lights. So he doesn't use a torch. He just wanders through in the dark, and that's why he's so good at sneaking up on people. Many experienced bushmen have had encounters with the Button Man, with one saying he had a 1,000-metre stare that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. They say no one knows he is near until he decides to make himself known. Disturbingly, a wildlife photographer spent days taking shots near the Button Man's camp. When he returned home and downloaded his photos to his computer, there was one unexplained shot of the photographer asleep inside of his tent, and no one knows who took the photo. He didn't know till he got home. He was completely safe. For reasons known only to himself, the Button Man builds rock pyramids in random spots, sometimes even people's camps, and places piles of pebbles on the road to tell if a car has passed.
Like, would the pile of pebbles fall over if a car went past?
Yeah, so he'll put them on the road like in the tyre tracks, and then the pile of pebbles will obviously be spread, and he'll know if a car's gone through it, say if he's off in the bush somewhere else.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. He likes to keep track of things. Those spending regular time in the Wodongatta hunting and camping have hidden firewood supplies in crevices, but when they have returned and found their stash gone, they say someone must have been observing them to know the location. An experienced hunter woke around 11 p.m. for a night hunt to find the Button camped right next to him, and he set up without a sound. Personally, I've spent a bit of time down Reddit and hunting groups, chat threads, trying to find as much information as I can on the people who have seen or had interactions with him. These places are wild, Megan. Like, really, really wild. Like, you go in and 2 hours feels like 2 minutes. I really like it in there. But from what I can quantify, it seems to me that if you're up there doing the right thing, he might drop in. He might make you feel a bit uneasy, but then he'll be on his way. The only people who have seemed to have any real issue with him are people who are doing the wrong thing. And this is where I became Team Button Man. I might even want to be the Button Man when I grow up. Probably a more witchier version, like maybe think, the old lady in Hansel and Gretel.
I can see it.
Like, I don't like gingerbread that much, and I'm not that into the eating of the children.
You don't have to eat the house or the kids.
No, but
I don't know if she ever intended on eating them.
I don't know. I think I've got a more of a Blair Witch vibe. Like the stuff hanging from the trees, random rock piles. You know. Yeah, and the people in the town. Like every now and then I'd go into town, but only so that people in the town could make up stories about me and tell their children, don't go into the forest or the witch will eat you. I have a burn book. Hasn't got people's names in it. It's stuff that I rip out and throw in the fire on the full moon. Things that I'm ready to let go of. I'm a good witch. Oh, no, actually I've just seen Wicked and I think I'd
you're
more
not Glinda.
No.
We spent quite a while talking about Wicked here, so we're going to speed it up a little for you so we can get back to the story.
I identify as Alphaba. I, however, don't know how to traverse the bush in the dark, hunt with a spear, and while at times I do look a little bit homeless, I'm not good enough at controlling my rage to plot how to scare the living shit out of these dickwads that should be in nightclubs instead of in my goddamn forest. But I'm going to work on it. Call me Button Man inspired. I could use a little stealth in my tactics though. Like maybe grabbing the phone out of the hand of a man who repeatedly refused to stop taking flash photography of penguins.
I thought we were going to talk about this.
We are going to talk about it.
Okay. Yay.
So, when we went to Phillip Island, there was a man. He was repeatedly told by staff to stop taking photos of the penguins. They tell you about it from when you arrive. They put it over the loudspeakers in about 5 different languages. They give you access to all of the free photos so you don't have to use flash photography, because the poor little penguins, as they're making their way up the beach to their little huts, if you set flashes off in their eyes, they don't know how to find their way home. And their girlfriend or their boyfriend's at the hut with the little chicks, and they're up there going, rah, 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 making the little penguin noise. That's not a penguin noise. That's just me pretending to know how to make a penguin noise. And so this guy's like, snap, snap, snapping. I did ask him a few times when we were down on the stand to stop doing it, and then I told the ladies that he continued to do it. We ended up moving away because I was so irate. And then I caught him over the side, setting the flash off in the little penguin's face, and I snatched the phone out of his hand and told him that if I caught him again, I was going to smash it to pieces. There's probably a better way that could have been done. Probably. There was also that one time in Foster. Were you there?
What are we listing?
All of the times that I've lost my shit and upset people.
Sorry,
camping.
too much wine.
Yeah.
Okay. That one time in Foster.
It was Australia Day weekend. Prime time for the biggest wankers to be out in the wild. Well, that night I laid in my tent listening to a group of boys.
I was there. I was there.
I thought you were. The group of boys were bragging about jacking off into their socks. And I wasn't offended by that part. It was kind of a little bit funny. I was concerned for the girl that was camping with them that was continuously vomiting because of the amount of alcohol she consumed. But eventually she went off to bed and they followed not too long after, but they had annoyed everybody. All the people camping around them were quite agitated. The security guard had come in several times and told them to quieten down and they'd be okay for sort of 10 minutes, and then the music would go up and the things that they talked about just got worse and worse and worse and worse. Had the kids been awake, I probably would have intervened, but I was just like listening to this young group of boys dick swinging, and it was a little bit like, oh yeah, you know, I could deal with that part. But then they went to bed and it all went dark and I was like, yes, this is great. Like, we'll get some sleep now. And then one of them just started flicking on and off the electric airbed pump. Just, and so it's probably the only time that I've actually succeeded in scaring the shit out of anyone when I was camping, but it was Scott when I tore open the tent and went flying out. And I think I started with, listen here, you little fuckstick. And then in my best and calmest mum voice, told him that if he turned the goddamn pump on again, I was going to strangle him with the cord.
Okay. All right. Funny stories to relive. How does this relate to where we are going today? Because we're already, by my count, unedited 1 hour and 5 minutes in.
Yeah, so you can just cut out what you want. I don't care. But the reason that I included that is because I was down this Reddit rabbit hole reading all of these things about the Button Man, and I wondered if somebody might have made a threat about camping next to me.
Oh, that would all make sense.
So in saying all of that, I quite like that the fellas up in the high country that are heavy on the piss, playing loud music, smashing beer bottles and shooting off guns into the air with reckless abandon are being held to task by having the shit scared out of them as the Button Man stalks them, messes with them just enough to tactfully reduce them to whimpering versions of their former testosterone-oozing selves, and I wonder if he offers an internship. One of the guys in the Reddit forum who camps in the Wonnangatta had some solid tips. In his advice, and this is in his words, pro tip to minimise being fucked with by the Button Man. Keep your camp rubbish free. Don't fuck with the bush more than you have to. Leave an offering, a drink and a non-perishable snack, and he may leave you alone. We, in brackets, a group of friends, did it as a joke, and he fucking showed up. We were absolutely munted in our swags, but one of the boys saw his silhouette through the swag vent. He walked in and around our camp, he moved some shit, and then he came across our joke offering. There was a note one of the boys wrote on the inside of a Macca's bag that said, "We love you, Button Man." Apparently he laughed, took the beer, packet of jerky, and left. And then there's Ben's story, which is my favourite. And I think you heard this or a version of it last night.
I haven't slept.
I love this for you. If this guy, Ben, isn't a writer, he should be.
Have we spoken to Ben?
No, we haven't. He didn't ever reply to it. He doesn't accept messages on Reddit because clearly every single podcaster who has ever done a story on the Button Man has used Ben's story because it's brilliant. So I'm just going to read you his words. My name is Ben and I live in Australia. In the southeast of Australia lies the state of Victoria, and in that state lies the high country, an extremely vast and remote expanse of alpine mountains and valleys that largely are only accessible by four-wheel drive and can take days to get in and out of. The place is popular with four-wheel drivers, deer hunters and hikers. We four-wheel drive, and this was the destination chosen to go camping for a few days with my partner Jess. Some time away from the world, beyond the reach of mobile phones. The four-wheel drive was loaded up, lists double-checked, vehicle maintenance done, fuel loaded into the roof racks, and police station closest to our destination notified of our trip. It's common for people to notify them as a safety measure, especially when not travelling in a convoy. Again, very remote. And off we went. We were headed to a place called the Warrnambool Valley, a remote valley deep in the high country. A huge amphitheatre-type valley with alpine mountains rising high in every direction and a river running along the valley floor. Towards the end of the first full day of driving, we finally made our way down to the last track for the day. Skirting the ridge and arriving at the valley floor, as the sun dipped below the mountains, we found a secluded spot to pitch our tent, nestled in amongst the eucalyptus trees by the riverbank. It was midweek and off-season, so we were the only ones in the valley. After setting up camp and having a meal by the fire as the sun went down, we snuggled together in our sleeping bags and in short order we decided to hit the hay. At some point in the night, I woke to a loud noise. I wasn't quite sure what I heard, so from inside of our tent, I listened. Nothing. I must be going mad. No sooner had I heard it, I heard another noise. It sounded like something falling off our camp table and hitting the ground. I put it down to possums or wombats fossicking about, common in the area and nothing to worry about. Should have packed up after dinner, I thought, and went back to sleep. Sunrise came and we slowly woke up. Needing to pee, I opened the tent and jumped out. Looking around, something just came over me, a chill. It wasn't the way we'd left it. Instead of seeing two chairs together by the fire where we were sitting, one of them was by the table. And on the table was a loaf of bread that I'd swear I packed away again the night before. I walked over to the table to inspect. A half-eaten piece of bread was sitting there with very obvious chomp marks taken out of it. I flung the tent door open and asked, "Were you up before me? Did you have some bread?" "No," was the answer. Jess got up and together we went through all of our stuff. Nothing was missing. As we went to check the four-wheel drive, I noticed the footprints. There was a bunch of them around the front of the car where the hood was. Most of the camp was covered in grass. This was one of the only few spots that was just dirt. Had someone tried to open it? Very distinct footprints, not mine or not Jess's. Perhaps they'd already been there. These camping spots were used intermittently, and obviously we weren't looking at the ground when we arrived the night before with the sun setting. I don't think either of us wanted to actually admit that we were both thinking that someone had been creeping about our campsite in the night, far from civilization. We discussed if a possum could have made the bite marks, argued about if one of us had left the bread out, and eventually discussed moving on and camping somewhere else. After much deliberation, we decided to stay. I had a rifle in the four-wheel drive, which I guess gave me an overinflated sense of safety, which in hindsight was a very poor decision. As the day rolled on, the sun shining and with nothing eventful happening, I decided to walk across the valley floor, an open field of subalpine grassland, about 800 metres to an old ruin of an isolated homestead built by settlers who ran cattle in the valley some 100 years ago. It's steeped in mystery. There's an old unsolved multiple murder from 1917 that's always captivated people. I read the plaque, took some photos, and started wandering back through the camp.
Is this what you were talking about earlier?
Yes, this is what I mentioned, yes. As I neared the halfway mark back to camp, I noticed Jess walking across the field towards me. Must have gotten bored, I thought. As she approached, it was clear she was in a panic. Immediately, she started to tell me how she went down to the riverbank to wash the pots and pans, and as she looked up, she saw someone over the other side of the river watching her from deep in the bush. I had no reason whatsoever not to believe her. I asked her what he looked like and got told an old man, 70s or thereabouts, scraggly looking and in old tattered clothes. Apparently, the second she looked up, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the impenetrable bush. I couldn't comprehend it. How was anyone out here without a four-wheel drive or a dirt bike? And how would anyone get to that side of the bank without first crossing over from our side? There's days worth of damn near impossible walking through bush on the other side just to get where my partner saw him. We decided to jump in the four-wheel drive and drive along the length of the valley, checking the dozen or so riverside camping spots as we went. I wanted to spot a camp, have my partner ID the guy, and make sure he wasn't creeping, with our theory being that he may have been a hunter off in the bush after a deer. After making our way up and down the valley and not seeing anything, we drove back to camp at a loss to explain anything. As the sun started to set, with my partner and I quite shaken, I grabbed the rifle and sat it down next to us where we cooked dinner, and we chatted, having a few drinks to settle the nerves. We had been spooked. Was it just that there's a lot of mystery surrounding the valley and the homestead murders? We talked a bit and settled in to a good foot warming in front of the fire. At some point, Jess needed to go to the toilet. I was asked to come with her to the spot behind a tree where we placed the portable toilet about 50 metres from camp. Considering everything that had gone on, it was a no-brainer. Jess did her business and we turned around and came back to the side of the tree, and that's when we saw him. Standing at our camp about a metre away from the rifle I had sitting against the table was a man. Old? Check. Scraggly looking? Check. Tattered old clothes? Check. Jess squeezed my arm so hard I thought it was going to come off. Everything about her body language screamed, "This is the same man." As we got closer, I could make out more odd things about him. He had part of a deer antler in his hand that looked like he'd been whittling away at it, and what looked like an antler piece carved to plug large holes in his ears like stretchers, but made out of bone. Same goes for the bone-looking buttons on his ratty old coat. He wore old leather shoes that looked homemade. "G'day, mate," he said. "Fuck me, mate. You gave us a fucking heart attack," I said, officially shitting bricks. "Where have you come from? Everything all right?" "Oh, just over yonder. You lot aren't hunting around here, are you?" Looking directly at the rifle. "We might be. Why?" "There's no hunting around here. Not enough deer as it is." "Well, we hadn't decided on it. Probably packing up anyway," I said as I edged my way towards the rifle. "I should put this away anyway. Didn't mean to spook you, mate," I said, looking for an excuse to get the rifle into my hands. "It's all good. Guns don't spook me," he said, and I imagined that they wouldn't. I picked up the rifle by the barrel and held it like a walking stick in an attempt to be non-confrontational, breathing a sigh of relief. "No offence, but you caught us a bit by surprise. You got to be the only one we've seen since we got here." "Yeah, I saw you come in last night." "I fucking bet you did." "I've been coming up here for 40 years. Beautiful spot, isn't it? Takes a bit to get down into the valley, hey?" "Yeah, mate. Look, no offence, but we're going to hit the sack soon. Do you need a lift back to your camp?" "Nah, all good. Just out for a wander before I tuck in for the night. Saw the fire and thought I'd say g'day. Anyway, better be on me way." And with that, he turned and walked off, parallel to the river, into the dark, no torch. That was officially enough to spook us beyond any ability to calm down, and we decided to pack up everything in the dark and head out, even if driving in the dark was a monumentally stupid idea in this part of the high country. We got into the four-wheel drive, and drove out, taking us along the valley floor. We didn't see a single fire, a camp, a vehicle, nothing. We just kept on driving. Halfway home, Jess, bored from the drive, flipped on the camera. No memory card. WTF.
Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so because you gave me a little forewarning of what was happening and I did a little research of what to expect today, I've had some time today to prepare my reaction and my questions.
Prepare your reactions. I love that you've done that. Have you followed through with it all?
I have some questions.
Okay, great.
Do you believe Ben's full story?
I don't know. I don't know if Ben's story's true, but it is the best freaking story out there.
He's a good storyteller.
He absolutely is, and he should write a book.
Or contact us and hop on our podcast.
Well, I did message him, but I think a lot of people have.
Can I ask when this was posted?
Yeah. So it was posted 3 years ago. That's what it tells me by Stumble Forward, who is also known as Ben.
Okay. So from picking up on your attitude at the beginning of the episode,
Yes.
you think that perhaps the Button Man is making moves on people who are being dickheads. Do you think bringing the rifle was a dick move?
No, and I don't think he was concerned about the rifle. I think he was just saying hello. And there's
That's
lots
why
of
he
other
let them
people.
go?
Yeah.
Do you think he's hurt people?
No. I have not found one account that talks about him being violent towards anyone. In all of the different stories, on all of the different forums, and like there's some weird, like there's a rugby league forum that there's a story on. There's a whole pile. Like if you want to go down the rabbit hole, you could be there for days. Lots of different accounts. The only people I've heard say that he really purposely tried to freak them out. There was a group of guys having a bucks party that were, loud music, all of that kind of stuff. There was a guy who was hunting outside of hunting season.
We have a season?
They have a season, I think. I don't know what it is, but I think there's certain periods of the year that you're allowed to hunt deer. So he was hunting in a time that you're not supposed to hunt, and the Button Man snuck up on him, and he doesn't do things to injure people, but he purposely tries to freak you out. Like he'll watch you and make noises and move around and make noises from different sides, and then and won't show himself until you are suitably shitting yourself. And then he might just stand there and just stare at you from off in the distance. So he might be on the edge of where the light is on your camp, and he'll just stand there and stare and stare. He might have a spear in his hand.
It's very creepy.
Yeah. Police from the Missing Persons Squad have heard all of these stories too. Search and rescue police hiked into the remote area near Kingbilly Track and chatted to Buttons at his camp on more than one occasion. Police went there not to accuse him of anything, but to seek his help because he knows the area as well as anyone, and sometimes observes hikers silently walking past. There's also sporadic sightings of the Button Man wandering into the nearby town of Mansfield to buy supplies, but the townspeople are intent on keeping his identity and campsite a secret. Several journalists have approached locals, and all they will say is he's a unique character who is highly resourceful, slightly possessive of the area that he sees as his patch, and he's usually only seen when he wants to be seen. But that will not stop others from spruiking that the Button Man has more severe intentions and may have been involved with some of the disappearances in the high country, although no evidence exists that suggests that this speculation is true. Herald Sun crime reporter Andrew Rule on the Hot Breakfast Show in May 2020, when asked about the people that have gone missing in Victoria's high country in the preceding 10 months, said, "When deer hunters go up into the mountains, sometimes this man approaches their campfires silently, and he turns up and he sits down uninvited and he makes awkward conversation. And the deer hunters find this, strange and off-putting. So when you add it up, so one person goes missing, you go, well, they got lost, they perished, and the dogs probably ate them. 2 people go missing, you go, well, that could happen. 4's starting to get a little bit interesting. Rules stress that the police haven't charged the button man with anything. I can say that the police have been up there to have long chats with this fellow. It was a very intriguing chat. They came away knowing that he has no criminal record. They came away knowing various things about him, but they didn't come away knowing any more about the disappearances, to be fair. Andrew, among a couple of other Victorian journalists, have written several articles with Button Man as the lead that goes into these missing people. It was big, big news. And while Russell and Carol had gone missing and there was nothing to report, because this was number 5 and number 6, all from that same area, and the media had nothing to report. So what better way to sensationalise a story than making implications that perhaps this man in the wilderness is hurting people, or worse, a serial killer?
Have they changed their story since at least one of those 6 of someone else?
You'd be hard-pressed to find an article written, like a newspaper article written about the Button Man since the Gregory Lynn trial started.
Because they've been proven wrong.
Well, it's not that they've been proven wrong, but they've got something to sell papers. And in saying that, I have to say that I'm guilty of clicking on every article that has his name attached. So I'm part of the problem as well. Because whatever we consume it, they will keep writing articles and making content trying to attach him to these mysterious disappearances when honestly his own mystery is more than enough. I hope no one ever finds out who he is and that one day he writes a book outlining how to fuck with dickheads in the forest.
Does Button Man live in the valley permanently?
No. So from what I've read, I think he might spend a few months out there at a time, but I think he probably has a life and possibly a family in suburbia.
Yeah, it can get overwhelming. I can see why people would want to run away and spend a long bit. It's like my silent meditation retreat, but he didn't have to pay for it.
I'm planning it as my long-term bloody goal for my life.
It's a very good goal.
Yeah. And I don't think it's as unusual as it sounds. It's because it's twisted into this mysterious disappearances. And yes, those stories on their own are enough that 6 people went missing or were murdered in that area. And his story is enough.
Well, only 4 are questionable, really.
Yeah. Yeah, there's only 4 of them that are questionable. And it's quite likely that the hikers could have, come across, got hurt or, you don't know. Maybe Yowie's got them.
And you said that there were like hundreds of thousands of people who visit here. Those statistics are pretty low.
436,000. Yeah, a year.
Well done. I remember that number. That's
I hope
really
it's
impressive.
right.
Very impressive. Do they think that the Button Man may be Aboriginal, that he is trying to live a traditional lifestyle?
I've never read anything that references that. The fact that he uses Indigenous hunting methods, possibly. In any of the descriptions, it hasn't said that he physically appears like he could be Indigenous. But how can you rule that out? How do you know that he hasn't got Indigenous heritage and that he's just honouring his culture? So, I haven't seen it written anywhere, but it's possible.
So you say that he was ruled out with all of those murder stories and he was happy to comply with the police. Is there any evidence to say, like, how do they know that?
Because I think the reporters speak to the police. So Andrew Rule is a crime writer for a Victorian newspaper, so he would have a close relationship with police and investigators. And I don't think the police ever went, like, they're aware that he's out there and they've heard the same stories, and people probably report it when they come back and go, some weird guy in the bush was stalking us, People would make police reports about that. But I don't think the police ever actually viewed him that he was a suspect. I think they respect him as a skilled bushman. And he has assisted in two of those, well, actually 3, because there was 2 people in the Russell and Carroll thing. So out of 6 people, he's assisted in 3. And being cooperative.
But one has no answer.
One has no answer. He was the
Possibly
last
2.
person to see that, and he didn't have information on Russell and Carroll, but he was willing to talk to police and be cooperative and talk about what he'd seen that day and who he'd seen coming and going. So he's been nothing but helpful, really.
Is there anything that you would like to say if the Button Man happened to listen to this podcast?
Oh, so many things. I was thinking that if there was, you know how people say, who are the 3 people that you would invite to dinner? The Button Man is now on my list.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what I'd say to him. I think I'd just like to listen to him. And he doesn't seem to talk much. Observe. Yes. I want to ask him if he's ever seen any yowies.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I'd like to ask him. Yeah. I don't know how you can see the Button Man as anything other than a national treasure. He's killing feral animals, assisting in police investigations, caring for the environment, and in his own unique way is trying to control illegal hunting and disrespectful behaviour. I think he's just a bloke who likes the wilderness far more than he likes people and wants to protect the place he loves most. Teach me your ways, wise man.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of If These Trees Could Talk. If you would like to access more about the places or information included in today's topic, please visit our website ifthesetreescouldtalk.com.au. If you would like to follow us on our adventures, check us out on Facebook or Insta. Our creative writer is Shannon Walters, and our podcast is produced at Bellevue Studio in the Hunter Valley with audio production by Megan Anderson. We love to hear your feedback, so please rate and review, and if you would like to hear more, please subscribe. We look forward to you joining us for our next adventure.